Okay. Can I just ask quickly, is Commissioner Raspy going to be joining us?
He will not be joining us. He did send an email.
He did. Okay. All right. I probably didn't see it yet. Okay. All right. Good evening. The Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, May 11th, 2022 is now called to order. Director Paulson, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Tavana? Here. Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Janoff?
Here.
Vice Chair Barnett?
Here.
And Chair Hansen?
Here as well. Thank you for that. And I'd like to have staff continue with the rules of decorum and civility for our meetings.
The public is welcome to participate in the meetings, understanding that the purpose of the meeting is to conduct the important business of the town in an efficient and effective manner. For the benefit of the entire community, the Town of Los Gatos asks that all speakers follow the town's meeting guidelines by treating everyone with respect and dignity. This is done by following meeting guidelines set forth in state law, in the town code, and on the cover sheet of the agenda. The town embraces diversity and strongly condemns hate speech and offensive hateful language or racial intolerance of any kind at board, commission, or committee meetings. Town council and staff are well aware of the public's right to disagree with their professional opinion on various town issues. However, antisocial behavior, slander, hatred, and bigotry statements are completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form at board, commission, or committee meetings. All public comments at the board, commission, or committee meeting must pertain to items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the town and shall not contain slanderous statements, hatred, and bigotry against non-public officials. The town will go through the following steps if a disturbance results from a member of the public not following these rules. If participating remotely, town staff may mute the individual with an explanation for the record of why muting occurred consistent with this policy. If participating in person, the chair may call a recess for violation of this policy, resulting in the immediate cessation of the audio and video recording and the commissioners exiting the chamber or meeting room. Staff will determine if the individual should be removed or if all members of the public should leave, depending on the extent of the disturbance. In the event that all public members exit, only the press would be allowed back in the meeting. Once the individual or individuals leave, the commissioners would return to the chamber or meeting room and the chair would resume the meeting. Persons disrupting a board, commission, or committee meeting may be cited for violation of the California Penal Code, Section 403.
Thank you for that. And so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is verbal communications. And the Planning Commission, as well as the town, welcomes members of the public to participate in our meetings. There are two basic ways to participate. One is with written communications, and the other is with verbal communications. With written communications, we appreciate getting written communications submitted to staff prior to the meeting. And we did get some comments for this meeting, and we generally get some for all of our meetings, and we definitely appreciate it. It is very helpful to the work of this Planning Commission. Then there's also verbal communications. We will have two forms of verbal communications. One is where you may speak on items that are not on the agenda, and the other is where in the hearing on a specific item, you can speak on that particular item. So now is the time where we would do verbal communications for items that are not on the agenda. We do ask that you state your name and address for the record. However, you may also choose to speak anonymously. And we do ask that everyone limit their comments to 3 minutes. So is there anyone that would like to speak in verbal communications on items that are not on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any hands raised for items that are not on the agenda.
Very well. Then we will move on to the consent calendar. And we have two items on the consent calendar for approval. They are the draft minutes of the April 25th, 2022 and April 27th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Any member of the public or member of the commission may choose to pull an item from the consent calendar for a hearing during the regular meeting. Is there anyone that would like to pull either of these items for hearing in the regular meeting? I don't see anyone with their hand raised. Okay, so then can I get a motion for approval of the minutes for these two meetings? Commissioner Clark.
I move to approve the minutes from the meetings.
Thank you. And is there a second? Commissioner Tavana.
I second that.
Thank you for that. And so then we will, if there are no suggested changes to the minutes, we will go ahead and do our roll call vote. And I will start with Commissioner Tavana,
Yes.
Commissioner Janoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So thank you for that. And so we will move on to the public hearings portion of the agenda. And our first public hearing is, I'm going to put my glasses on, considering an appeal of a community development director decision to deny a fence height exception request for construction of a 5-foot 9-inch fence located within the required front yard setback on property zoned R1 to 10, located at 14741 Blossom Hill, APN 527-41047. Property owner, applicant, and appellant is Alexandra Mims, and project planner is Ryan Safdie. And so I will ask if there is a staff report for this item. Oh, and I apologize. Are there any disclosures for this item by commissioners? And may I see a show of hands from commissioners that have visited the subject property? Thank you. So then I will go to staff and see if Mr. Safdie has a staff report for us.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Before you is an appeal of a community development director decision to deny a fence height exception request at 14741 Blossom Hill Road. The property owner is requesting approval to permit a previously constructed 5-foot 9-inch wooden fence approximately 15.5 feet from the front property line within the required front yard setback. The fence was built in 2019, shortly after the town's fence ordinance was updated. Per current town code, fences and gates are limited to 3 feet in height when located within a required front yard, unless an exception is granted by the town engineer and community development director. Planning staff cannot find that any of the required conditions for exceptions listed in town code section 2940-320 exist, and therefore denied the fence height exception request. For the exception request, the property owner cited condition B1 for privacy concerns. However, section B only applies to side and rear yard fences, and therefore staff cannot support the exception with condition B. The property owner also cited condition D for security concerns related to the orientation of the home, as their child's bedroom window faces Blossom Hill Road. As Blossom Hill Road is a busy thoroughfare with pedestrian and vehicular traffic, there have been instances in the past with trespassing and theft. The owner is concerned that a 3-foot tall fence would not provide security for their child's bedroom. However, section D only allows for an exception when a special security concern exists that cannot be practically addressed through alternatives. Since town code would allow a 6-foot fence with 1 foot of lattice above if moved back to meet the front setback requirement, staff cannot support the exception with condition D. The property owner provided additional justification in their appeal packet, which is included as Exhibit 7 of this report. Specifically, the owner states that it would cost upwards of $2,000 to move the fence, and they would need to remove previously installed garden beds and fruit trees located behind that fence. Additionally, the owner referenced neighborhood compatibility. There are 4 other neighbors on the same block that have fences, gates, or hedges that do not comply with the town's updated fence ordinance. However, per Google Maps historic imagery, the fence, gate, wall, or hedge of all 4 of these neighbors existed prior to the town's updated ordinance. One neighbor did submit a letter in support of the fence, which is included as Exhibit 10 of the report. No other comment was received. Based on the discussion provided in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission deny the appeal, uphold the decision of the director, and deny the fence site exception. And this concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Safdie. Do any commissioners have questions for Mr. Safdie? Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. I have a question about the conditions. So since the privacy condition only applies to side and rear fences, if the commission felt like there was a privacy concern, would there be any sort of action that we could take, or is that just not like written into anything?
Thank you for the question. So that would require an amendment to the town code. There are other conditions, related to special circumstances, but that is tied to lot size and configuration. But based on the way the code's currently written, if it was a privacy concern, it would be limited to the side and rear property.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other commissioners, Commissioner Tabata?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the previous fence ordinance. The owner states that this fence was built just after the new town ordinance was put into place. Would this fence as is meet the old town fence ordinance?
Thank you for the question. And Mr. Paulson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the previous fence ordinance did allow a 6-foot fence all the way up to the front property line. So yes, it would have complied with the old fence ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes, can staff provide information as to how this fence violation was first found, came to the attention of the town?
Yes, thank you. So as kind of summarized in the staff report, the code enforcement officer was actually contacted by the property owner. They had questions about fence requirements and height restrictions for a shared property line fence. So not this current fence. While coming out to the site, the code enforcement officer noticed that there was a newly constructed fence that didn't comply with our regulations, and basically informed the owner that to get that legally permitted, they would need approval of a fence site exception.
Okay. I do have a question. We've had this issue with some other hearings before. This application or this issue of the fence being built happened not long after the applicant bought the property. I'm sure we're going to hear from the applicant, but what notification would they have received regarding the fence ordinance? I mean, because this came up because they had contacted the town about something else, and then it was noticed that this was not in compliance. So what kind of communication would the applicant have been able to receive that would have let them know that they had an issue when they built this fence?
Thank you for the question. So they could have reached out to town staff to see what our current fence requirements are, and we would have been, happy to explain those. In terms of when, the fence ordinance was adopted, no, there was not notification sent out to each individual property owner.
Okay, all right,
And
thank you.
Chair, I could add, at the time in 2019, just before this fence was built, when the new fence ordinance was put in place, we did do social media outreach and outreach to common, architects who come and work with the town frequently and other interested parties. But that was part of the notification before we had hearings. And so it is actually quite possible that all of that occurred just before this property owner purchased this property. And so they very well may not have been aware of that recent change and could have done this based on what they saw at other properties in the area.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, do any other commissioners have questions for staff? I think that was pretty much everyone. So then we will go on to the applicant appellant and give them up to 5 minutes to speak to the commission.
Thank you. Applicant can speak. You've
Yes.
unmuted yourself.
Yes, I have. Can you hear me? Great. Okay. Thank you first so much for listening to this appeal. I appreciate you all taking the time. As was discussed, this fence has been in place for 2 years, almost 2.5 years at this point. And I guess I kind of shot myself in the foot by trying to do the right thing, contacting about another issue. And then it came up that this fence was out of code. So that was just particularly bad luck, even though at the time we asked the fence company and actually an inspector for the house as well, which I couldn't remember who it was since it was a long time ago at this point, trying to make sure we had the setback correct. And everyone cleared it. They all said they were not aware, of anything that said otherwise. And I could see it being just a few months past when this new ordinance passed, how that would have happened. And as said, a lot of the houses on our street have very high, even over 6-foot fences at the property line. So perhaps some people assumed, but ours, unlike others, for those that have driven by, our fence is set back 15 feet. So it's not at the property line. I think it's much more appealing. And it's also not the whole house. It's probably a third of the house. It's really only the part that has the bedrooms. The rest of the house is completely open. And one part that wasn't discussed is not only the privacy issue for Blossom Hill, which the traffic does back up all the way to our house during the morning and evenings from the traffic light at Union. So we will have standstill traffic in front of our house. So people are just sitting there staring at our house, which is weird when you have bedrooms right there. But we also have Regent Drive directly across the street. And the T intersection could not be any more direct from the bedroom windows. And it is a community of 40 plus houses. And the only way in and out is Regent. So it's all these cars going up and down Regent, coming into the stop sign directly at our house, which is an issue because they look into the windows, especially at night. Headlights come in. And, we often have windows open, and it's, definitely a privacy issue for the kids. So reducing the fence height would not help in that aspect at all. And the reason to begin with, we chose a fence and not shrubs or any other landscaping is because we have young kids and it's really dangerous to allow them to have access to Blossom Hill Road. And that area on the other side of the fence is filled with, gosh, we have 3 fruit trees, 5 garden beds. And so moving that fence back 8 feet would also take out a lot of what's there, destroy a lot of that work that's been put in the last 2 years. And the kids and I spend a lot of time in that area. And speaking of costs, I actually contacted some fencing companies to get an estimate before going through this appeal process, thinking, if this wouldn't work out. And they said it would be about $2,000 because since the fence is so old, they will not reuse any of the wood. They have to build a completely new fence. So it's basically $2,000 to move it 8 feet. And it's 8 feet because our garage is only set back 23 feet. So my understanding from this whole process is we would be able to at least move the fence in line with the garage, which would still be out of code technically because it's not 25 feet, it would be 23 feet. And I understand up to this point, the denials of the fence height exception have been, pretty black and white. If it's out of code, it's denied. So I'm asking you to consider, a lot of aspects in that it's not covering the whole house. It's set back 15 feet. It's $2,000 to move. We live on a very busy street with a direct intersection. The fence has been in place for 2 years, probably 2.5 years at this point. And replacing it with landscaping really isn't an option for us with the kids' safety. Dropping the fence height doesn't help either because of traffic and the intersection. So it's kind of 2 options. One, move the fence back 8 feet, which destroys half the garden, changes the kids' bedroom view to a fence wall, costs us $2,000 and taking out the whole garden there. Or 2, if you allow us to keep the fence, which has been there a long time, cleared by multiple people, and the neighbors are okay with it. They've, one of them's written a letter. And, I apologize that we're in the situation of having to appeal something after the fact, because we really tried our best to make sure everything was correct from the start. And I think that ordinance was just so new, people just didn't know, or the people we asked didn't know. So thanks for listening to the appeal and taking the time to review all of my many pages of documentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. And Director Paulson was just letting me know your 5 minutes was up, but
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. But you finished. So I'll ask if any commissioners have questions for you. Vice Chair Barnett.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Can you better identify the inspector that you referred to?
I can't, and I reached out to our contractor because she had the conversation with him, and there's no way to find it out. And I think Mr. Safdie tried to look today and you couldn't figure it out because you asked a few people.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, if I might, Chair.
Go ahead.
With the window privacy and the security concerns, issues that you had before you bought the house.
So I don't know if you, well, I don't know. I also don't know if you saw the house before we bought it. It was, I would say, barely livable condition. So I don't know what they were passing by with, but we also reoriented a lot of the room. So I don't know. I don't remember what was front facing at that point.
Okay, but was that a concern of your own rather than the prior owner?
The privacy definitely was when we bought the house, because I remember speaking to the real estate agent and she said, with the T intersection, you're going to have to figure out something to cover the windows, because we're talking about resale too. And she said, people aren't going to want to buy a house where you can see directly at a T intersection. But that was, very secondary to, honestly, to the kids' privacy.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And then Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. I had a question about the one tree within the enclosure that looks like it's a fairly mature tree. Can you confirm that what looks to be a lemon tree or a citrus tree in the corner nearest to the garage? Can you advise us to the age of that tree approximately? Is it one that you planted or was it one that existed?
No, it is one that existed. You are correct. It is a lemon tree. It has, it's probably been there for at least 10 years. I'm looking at the base of it right now. It's not anything new.
It doesn't look like a sapling. So yeah.
No, it's not. We get easily 100 lemons off that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question for you. You heard in the staff report and saw in the staff report that when you filed your appeal, you had cited condition B. I'm asking the question because at the end of the day, the Planning Commission does have to grant an exception. We have to make one of those findings that is on the list of things. So condition B doesn't apply because it's not a side or rear fence. But you also had cited condition D, I believe, is the security and privacy. So is that the one that you would like us to consider, or is there something else in the exceptions to the ordinance that you would like us to look at?
I'm sorry, remind me what B is.
B was the exception based on the interior, if it was a side or rear lot, or fence rather. So.
Sorry, I'm just not familiar with the letters of each. But B was with the privacy or security.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's more of a privacy issue.
Okay.
To be honest with.
So that you want us to consider whatever condition in the ordinance that pertains to your privacy in terms of making a finding that we could grant this exception.
Yes, it is more a privacy than security issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Do any other commissioners have questions for the applicant appellant? I don't see any. So then now it's time for public comments. Although we don't. Oh, Commissioner Clark, did you have your hand up? Oh no. Okay. All right. Sorry. now is the time for public comments. We don't have a lot of attendees, but I will ask if anyone member from the public, aside from the applicant appellant, would like to speak on this item. And I will remind the commission, we do have one comment from a neighbor. I don't see anyone with their hand up. Okay, so then our process for the meeting, Ms. Mims, is for us to go back to you, and you have up to an additional 3 minutes to speak to the commission if you would like. You're on mute.
Ms. Mims, yeah, you need to unmute yourself again.
Oh, sorry. Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I have much else to say, to be honest, but I will say that I know part of the code as well too says that it specifically calls out children, being able to, residents have the right to fence their properties to protect children. So, and that is part of the reason too that we chose a fence and not landscaping for the privacy. So it's kind of a, I guess in this situation, there's a lot of factors at play with the age of the fence, you know, the clearing with multiple people, the protecting the children and the privacy. So I know this issue isn't as black and white as probably some other fence requests. So thank you for considering all those aspects, and I will not add any more.
All right, well, thank you for your comments. And so I will now close the public hearing, and I will turn to the commission to see if there are any questions for staff or comments, or if you were prepared to make a motion, but I think there's probably going to be questions or comments. Commissioner Clark.
I have 2 questions for staff. So first, the applicant just mentioned that the code specifically calls out children. Are you able to tell us more about that?
Yes, thank you. I just got the code section up. So under the intent statement, under the fence ordinance, it says the following. The intent of these fence regulations, as defined in section 2940-0310, is to preserve the natural beauty of the town of Los Gatos, the natural movement of wildlife, and to protect traffic view areas while acknowledging that residents have the right to fence their properties to protect children, contain their animals, protect garden or agricultural areas, and maintain privacy.
Thank you. I appreciate you finding that. And my other question is that I understand that even if the fence were pushed back to be aligned with the garage, it still wouldn't meet the setback because the garage doesn't completely meet it. So if they were to choose, so if we denied the appeal and they chose to move their fence back, would they need to move it even further back than the garage?
Thank you again. So with buildings, at least, if a building's not conforming as to a setback, we do allow the building to continue along that existing non-conforming line. So during conversation, with the property owner, when staff was reviewing this, that was one thing that we offered was perhaps they consider moving it back to that line. Ultimately, it would be up to the director if he could support. So to answer your question, technically, yeah, the fence code says 25 feet, but since there is that existing nonconformity, I do think it'd be something that staff can consider at the discretion of the director.
Okay, great, thank you.
Through the chair, I can answer that. Given that we would allow a building to go along that same line, that is an exception that we would more than likely grant.
Okay, do other commissioners have questions? All right, I have a question. Where I was going with this is, I'll start with a comment. I do feel that in this particular case, this is a special circumstance. I think that there's plenty of justification that the applicant appellant probably didn't know, given the timing of when they bought their house, about the fence ordinance. And then this was discovered only as a result of them reaching out about something else to do the right thing. However, where I was going with my questioning of the applicant was about the actual ordinance itself. So, you know, we do have to make a finding in the exceptions category. And they did cite condition D, which is special security concern that cannot be practically addressed through alternatives. And it's staff's opinion that they have other alternatives. So what I'm asking is it in our discretion as the Planning Commission to disagree with the practical alternatives view?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then a follow-up question, and then Commissioner Janoff has a comment. Or is it possible that we can make a finding that wasn't cited by the applicant, like E, a special consideration, including lot size or configuration, like they're facing right across from Regent Drive, for example? Is that something that we can do? But since the applicant didn't mention it, is it not allowed?
You may use any of those exceptions.
Okay, very good. And that's only if the commission feels that there's justification for the exception. Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree that the exceptions cited by the applicant probably aren't as applicable as item E. I do think there are a number of circumstances that exist with this particular parcel that are special circumstances in my view, although I'm interested in hearing from my fellow commissioners, and I'll just run through them. This is a really, really busy street. This is actually live on Blossom Hill Road, so I can attest to the traffic being an issue and at standstill in front of this property. The 44 houses coming down from Regent, the traffic from the 44 properties coming down from Regent Avenue is a real consideration. That's a lot of motion in and out through the day. The fence encloses an existing mature tree, which I find very appealing for a young family to be able to access a citrus tree and pick the fruit that they're going to use in the kitchen. And, you know, that's a very compelling thing for me. It's an activity that I do with my grandchildren. So I can see that this is an area that presents a lot of opportunity for the family. Making it smaller, taking that tree outside the fence could be problematic. Also leaving that fence outside the tree outside the fence, if they were to move the fence toward the house, creates a different problem, because then you've got an attractive nuisance with a fruit tree that people can come on your property and pick a lemon now and then. And we all know that that happens. So for those reasons, and not to mention the notion that the fence, although an exception could be granted, would still technically be non-conforming. You know, I'm not convinced that the 8 feet is enough to warrant movement. And lastly, I'll just say it's a really refreshing thing to see a fence not right at the sidewalk or 1 foot off the sidewalk as we've seen before. So this clearly doesn't pose any issue with traffic views, which is the case that we have had with some other fences that have been tall and pushed out right to the sidewalk. So I would be inclined for those reasons to find that we have an exception E that we can justify.
Okay, I may come back to you for a motion, but Commissioner Tamana has a question or comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to echo a lot of the same sentiments you mentioned, Chair Hansen and Commissioner Janoff. So I support a special circumstance condition E here. I think it was an unfortunate occurrence where they were trying to do the right thing originally, contacting the town. But here we are. So well said. I support E.
Okay. And do any other commissioners have questions or comments? Vice Chair Barnett.
Yeah, sure. In the comments regarding exception E, I think looking at the fence from the street and from Regent, it doesn't offend my sensibilities regarding creating a barricade look on Blossom Hill Road. And I think the fact that the front of the house is facing Blossom Hill is a reasonable consideration in addition to the other comments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, so if there are no other comments, would someone like to make a motion? Perhaps Commissioner Janoff?
Yes, I'd be happy to make a motion. I move that under consideration of this appeal to deny a fence height exception, that we would approve the fence as It is currently built, a 5'9" fence located within, not located in the front yard, not within the setback. The code requires APN 527-41047. And the exception to the fence ordinance that I am proposing is section 29.40.0320, item E, special circumstance, for the reasons that have already been provided. And this concludes my motion.
And question for the maker of the motion. So you are granting the appeal?
Yes.
Yes.
The motion is to grant the appeal.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Clark?
Second.
Very good. I don't think there's any other comments because most everyone has commented. So let's go ahead with our roll call vote. And I will start with Commissioner Cabana.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Janow.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it passes unanimously. And I will ask staff if there are any appeal rights for this action by the commission.
Yes, there are. Thank you, Chair. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available online and at Town Hall. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed by 4 p.m. 10 days from this decision.
Okay, very good. All right, so then we will move on to the next item that's in a public hearing, and that is requesting approval for technical demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence on property zoned R18, located at 1668 Shannon Road, APN 532-05-002, architecture and site application S-21-039. Property owners applicants Peter and Sherry Binkley, and our project planner is Aaron Walters. And before I go to the staff report, I'd like to ask if any commissioners have any disclosures to make on this item. And then if I could see a show of hands from commissioners that have visited the subject property. Very good. So I understand Ms. Walters will be giving the staff report.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. The application before you tonight is a request for a technical demolition of an existing single-family residence with construction of a new two-story residence. The applicant is proposing construction of a new 3,420 square foot two-story residence with an attached 3-car garage and a 450 square foot below grade square footage under the home. The applicant is proposing, and it's also proposing an attached junior ADU on the second floor of this proposed residence. However, this is not part of the application and will be reviewed under a separate ministerial application. Planning Commission is hearing this application this evening as the proposed project will result in the largest home in terms of square footage in the immediate neighborhood, and that's by 617 square feet. The project is not the largest square footage in the immediate neighborhood. The applicant has provided a letter of justification for the proposed residence and the justification for neighborhood compatibility. This can be found in Exhibit 4. The applicant's justification includes that there are other two-story homes in the immediate neighborhood, that the subject property is larger than many of the other properties within the immediate neighborhood, that the proposed house retains a deep front setback on Shannon Road. The applicants had initially designed a different two-story addition that almost reached the maximum allowable square footage, but had since redesigned to reduce the project to become more incompatible with the immediate neighborhood. The proposed architecture is a simplified Mediterranean style with smooth stucco siding, a concrete roof, and wood and iron accents. And this materials board can be found in Exhibit 5. The consulting architect reviewed this project and made 7 different recommendations. The applicant has addressed all the recommendations with the exception of modifying the existing driveway. The driveway is an existing condition and there's no proposed change there. The proposed residence is in compliance with the allowable square footage, height, setbacks, lot coverage, and parking requirements for the property, and no exceptions are being requested. The applicant has conducted outreach to their neighborhood, and that's summarized in Exhibit 11. And Exhibit 12 includes public comments with project support. There is an addendum that was provided, which is a copy of the applicant's presentation for tonight. Staff has recommended denial for this application as the project does result in the largest home in terms of square footage in the immediate neighborhood. However, if Planning Commission is able to make the required findings for approval, these actions of approval are described in alternative 1. So this concludes staff's report, and I am available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? I don't see anyone with their hands up. Okay, then we will turn to the applicant and have them speak for up to 5 minutes.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I did have some slides. Are we able to put those up as well?
Give it 1 second. We'll pull those up.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, if you're able to hear me, this is Sherry Binkley, and I'm sitting here with my husband, Peter Binkley. We'd like to thank all the commissioners for their time this evening and staff for their countless amount of hours that they've worked with us for this project that has now been, I guess, over a year, almost 2 years of being worked and reworked. Since we are remote, I just wanted to provide you with a picture of our family. My wonderful husband who works at El Camino Los Gatos and a Good Samaritan, is an avid mountain biker and bike commutes every day from our home currently, and also volunteers at the school with Safe Routes to School. He grew up in the area in Saratoga, and along with our beautiful twins who attend Blossom Hill Elementary, they walk there every day, rain or shine. My son is finishing up his first year of Little League this year, and my daughter is going to be performing with Los Gatos Ballet at the end of the month as well. Can I have the next slide, please? We have lived in Los Gatos for 12 years now. This was our first home that we lived in for 10 years. We just wanted to provide a picture of what we were able to do slowly but surely as individual homeowners. We removed a huge amount of lawn that was a kind of a water, drained a lot of water with nothing to provide for it. We did an entire edible landscaping that you can't see inside the fences, but it was 125 square feet of vegetable gardens and fruit trees, and we added a lot of trees and everything up front, and we think we were able to make it into really a wonderful home, and that was advantageous to the neighborhood, and we provided a lot of vegetables to neighbors as well. Next slide. This is just the location of our current lot. We love the location because the proximity to works and schools and parks allows us to do it with bikes and scooters and get there really easily, and even to downtown. It's a large flat lot. It's got a huge south-facing backyard. As you can see previously, we're big vegetable gardeners, and we're excited about the backyard that we can do so much with coming up. And it also allows us to have a lot of solar advantage moving forward to have a green home. Next slide, please. This is the current condition of our home right now. And as you can see, it requires quite a bit of work. The roof is kind of at the end of its lifespan. I think almost all of the windows currently are cracked in single pane. We went into this with multiple ideas. We originally were even trying to do this as a minor res, realizing that the stucco goes all the way to the ground. We're going to have to take out more walls than we had originally wanted to, which is why we kind of got where we wanted to. And the reason for the larger square footage just being that we wanted to kind of take advantage of everything that we needed to do while taking the roof off for the future. And next slide. And as you can see, we have a large wall in the front there, which is that white wall on the north side or on the top of that sheet. And that's the wall that we're kind of enclosing in there in the plans. And that's as far out as the house would go, as we wouldn't be going past that white wall. Next slide. That's the courtyard that we were talking about enclosing into this project and making this as far out as the house would go. And the second story, of course, would be set back even further than that. Next slide. And this is a diagram of our current home kind of slashed out there, and that's that wall on the bottom of the slide, and this would be the new house kind of opposed over it. So you can see that with the new house, it'll actually open up the property a little bit to Shannon Road on the left-hand side of the screen there, which will allow us to actually probably put in some more trees and landscaping and stuff on that side. Next slide. This is just and again, one more overview of the property and where we are and how far back we are on Shannon Road, and that we're not going forward more. And this is just immediate neighborhood to give you guys an idea of what we're looking at with the neighbors. The house on the right is behind us, so it's not considered our immediate neighbor, even though it technically, I mean, it seems like they are, but they're not per town guidelines. Next slide. And I just wanted to include the fact that for our immediate neighborhood, the north lots here are smaller in square footage, but higher in the FAR of the new proposed house. And our lot is 15,000, almost 16,000 square feet. So it's more property size, similar to the houses a little further out down Inglewood. And I included the square footages there of those homes. This is not technically, this is from Zillow, so not particular. And next slide. This is the home. Next slide. Last slide. I think I made it. This is just a picture my dad drew of the house with some landscaping in, so you guys could get an idea of where we're going with it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And I'd like to ask commissioners if they have any questions for you. Okay, I don't see, Vice Chair Barnett.
There we go. As staff pointed out, the one condition suggested by the consulting architect that you're not in agreement with has to do with the concrete circular driveway. And his concern was that it's impermeable and rather large. I was wondering if you could comment on why your position is against that.
Yes, can you still hear me? Okay. We were not going to change the driveway with this project. I think we will probably be doing that in the future. But I think also there was a little bit of an error in the architectural review. They had thought that we were expanding the driveway towards the right there. And as you can see, there was a, if you drive, when you're there right now, there's a large pothole there. And so they thought we were expanding the current driveway, not that we were just leaving it in its current existence. But we're not expanding the driveway, like towards the right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Clark. And then Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, so you're the largest in size by 617 square feet, and I assume you've thought about what it would look like if you had to lose that. And I'm just wondering if you know specifically what you would have to sacrifice if you were to lose that square footage.
We would really need to probably start from scratch again at this point. I think we tried to shave off as much as we could, but we'd probably be starting from scratch and probably have to do, we'd probably have to go towards having I know our neighbors all have the second story basement below grade. So I think that's probably the avenue we would go towards, but it would mean completely redoing the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. I did have one question with regard to the consulting architect's report. I note that on his report of July 22nd, page 5, item number 1, he's citing the residential design guide, section 3.22, which says carry wall materials, window types, and architectural details around all sides of the house. That's a point of reference. Mm-hmm. In your exhibit 9, which is the response to the consulting architect, item number 7 says at the bottom, the windows will not be divided. But when I look at the elevation at the front of your house, there are divided windows on all of the windows. So my question to you is, are you planning to be consistent with the residential design guidelines, which says your window design will be consistent around all 4 sides of your house? And is the elevation that we're looking at, which is sheet A3.1, is that not up to date with your plans for no divided lights?
Yes, I would say that. Thank you for that. Yes, we do plan to be consistent with all the windows going around. We provided the window. I apologize, it was updated in the materials board. And it would be the tilt and turn, which were not divided windows, but you're right that the diagram is a little incorrect on the elevations. I apologize.
Not a problem. I'm just wanting to note that the front elevation windows would not be divided.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions for the applicant? Okay, I think not. So then we will move to the public comments section of this hearing and ask if any members of the public would like to speak on this item. I don't see anyone. Okay. And you don't see anyone either?
Any hands raised?
Okay, very good. So then we will go back to the applicant, and you have up to an additional 3 minutes to speak to the commission should you choose to do so.
You can unmute yourself, Ms. Binkley.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you hear us? Yes. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to have a chance to say hello and thank you also. My name is Peter. I've been calmly listening to my wife tell you everything in a very eloquent way. But essentially, I think you understand the situation. It's that we want to do a 2-story house on this lot that is quite a bit larger than our houses that are considered, the quote unquote immediate neighborhood. But there are other lots similar in size going down Inglewood with similarly sized houses to what we're proposing. Also, we do want to do a 2nd story, and sometimes those can look imposing. This one is set back significantly from both in front and in back, and we've set the 2nd story in on the sides as well. And so those setbacks, along with some landscaping, I think will really soften any imposing nature, as well as the point that we're actually nestled between 2 2-story houses. So to our right, there's a 2-story, and right behind us is a 2-story. So from any sort of street view, we're not obstructing anything other than a view of another 2-story house.
Are there any questions for the applicant and commission? I have one quick question. Well, it's certainly per state law, it's not the purview of the planning commission to evaluate your decision to do ADUs or the circumstances of it. I just wanted to ask the question to confirm, because the town is, of course, looking for additional growth in housing units, that you do have plans for a junior ADU as well as a regular ADU. Is that correct?
It is, and it is drawn in on the front elevation, so that is taking up some of that space. Is a junior ADU, correct? And we plan to do a junior and both ADUs to try to help with housing.
Yes,
okay.
We have both of our parents are thankfully still alive and well, all 4 of them, and we do have plans to keep them out of skilled nursing facilities for the rest of their lives, and we want to be ready for that time because they are getting up there in age. I'm glad they're not listening to this meeting, but yes, they will be living with us someday, and we're looking forward to the whole family being together.
Okay, very good. Are there any other questions from commissioners for the applicant? Don't see any hands raised, so we will close the public hearing. And we will turn to the commission for questions, comments, or potentially a motion. Commissioner Tabana.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I support this application. While they will be the largest in terms of square foot in the immediate neighborhood, they are not the largest far. They're asking for no exceptions, or no exceptions are being requested. They've addressed all of the town consulting comments, and most importantly, the neighbors support them and their project. So for those reasons, I will be voting in support of this application.
Very good. Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you. I support Commissioner Tabana's comments. And I also wanted to add that it's nice to see a plan that doesn't bump out beyond the existing footprint, the footprint of the existing house. So it looks like a fairly modest, it's a lot of square footage, but when you look at the actual dimensions of the rooms and what rooms are planned for it, it doesn't seem like it's excessively dimensioned. The second floor bedrooms, for instance, seem reasonable to me. They also have quite a bit of ceiling height, so that's going to seem more spacious internally as well. But I did want to just say that I appreciate that they kept to the primary footprint of the existing house. I mean, not exactly, it does bump out here and there, but in general, that's what we have. And I appreciate that it's been thoughtfully designed. And I don't have an issue with it being the largest house, especially since the lot is large, and it's still not over on FAR. So I would be in support of this application.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. I want to echo both what Commissioners Tavana and Janoff said. I was very impressed by the way that they responded to the consulting architect. I think we see a lot of excuses when those suggestions come up, and they just listened and did what was recommended, which I really appreciated and liked to see. And I think that they're doing a lot of things that align with the general plan environmentally, and like using gray water and things like that, which I think is really great to see. And I appreciate actually that they built up rather than taking a backyard space that they plan to use for things like fruit trees and solar. I think that's really great to see. And then I agree. I mean, it doesn't go over any of the requirements, and it isn't the largest FAR. And then this is not really related, but I just want to say, I think it's really great to see these 2 ADUs being added and to see the parents being moved in, because that is a very beautiful concept. And I really appreciate seeing that happen in the town.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Clark. Vice Chair Barnett.
Thank you. I echo the prior comments by my fellow commissioners. I think the house is compatible with the neighborhood. There are a number of large homes on the south side of Shannon that or even, would be comparable to it not in size, but in appearance from the road. And appreciate that there are no exceptions requested for FAR or parking or height, etc. My one concern is that the circular driveway is not being proposed. And I think rather than leaving it for the indefinite future, that should be a condition of approval. Thank you.
A condition of approval in what form?
Requirement for approval of the application.
To what? To redo the driveway?
To redo the circular driveway so that it's permeable and modular as recommended by the consulting architect.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Let's see. I think all the commissioners have commented except for me, and I wouldn't have any comments that would be in addition to what I heard from the commissioners. But I will just state that I feel that the really compelling points of this application are that it isn't asking for any exceptions to our town code, and as stated by other commissioners and in the staff report, this is a bigger lot, and so it is justified. And they also are not maxing out the square footage, which is something we see all the time. So I think all things considered, the salient points of this application are that they're not asking for anything that's really out of order. And then they have a good design, and they've been working with our staff and the consulting architect. So I will see if any commissioners have want to make a motion. Commissioner Clark.
I actually want to make a comment on the driveway, because I think we need to figure out if that would be a condition of approval. So my question would pretty much be, since it sounds like there was a misunderstanding with the consulting architect, I would rather defer to the consulting architect whether or not they think that that still needs to be done. And I don't know if that's possible for that to be a condition, but I think I'd be a little more comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Do other commissioners have comments about the driveway? Commissioner Janoff.
Yes, I think imposing this as a condition of approval seems a little heavy-handed in that it's an existing driveway and it's serviceable. I think over time, this, I mean, who knows what the applicant will actually do, but we're listening to an applicant who's committed to the environment, committed to planting appropriate trees and vegetable garden. And, I suspect over time that will be a project on their list that will go. I hate to make it a condition of approval, but I'm interested in what other commissioners have to say.
Okay, Commissioner Chavana.
I would agree with you, Commissioner Janoff. I don't think it's necessary to include it. Actually, I wouldn't want it included as a condition of approval for this particular application. As they mentioned, as you've mentioned and they've mentioned, it is a serviceable driveway that can be used and will be used after construction is complete. And then down the road, I'm sure when the time comes and they do make a change, if they do make a change, it can be addressed at that point.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Chavana. I will weigh in as well. I would hope that the applicant would ultimately go with a permeable surface for their driveway. They are making a lot of other changes in addition to that, and it is an existing condition. So I would not be in favor of making it a condition of approval of this project, rather just some guidance from the Planning Commission that they ought to consider going that direction, given all the other good things that they're doing for the environment. So that being the case, is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion? Or Vice Chair Barnett, did you have a comment?
No, I was prepared to try and make a succinct motion.
Go ahead.
Concerning 1666A Shannon Road, I move to approve the technical demolition of the existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence on property zoned R18, APN 532-05-002. Property owners Peter and Sherry Binkley. I can make the required findings for SEQA. I can make the required findings for demolition of an existing structure. I can further make the find the compliance with the zoning regulations. I can also find that the project is in compliance with the residential design guidelines. And I can make the considerations in review of an architectural and site application. The approval is subject to the plans attached as Exhibit 13 and the conditions attached as Exhibit 3.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a second to Vice Chair Barnett's motion? Commissioner Chavana.
I second that.
Thank you for that. And are there, Commissioner Janoff, did you have a comment?
Yes, a clarification for the maker of the motion that Exhibit 13 should be noted that the front elevation with divided light windows is not part of the plan, or however we want to say that to reflect that they won't be divided light windows.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if that is a part of the motion. Thank you.
Okay, and then does the seconder agree to that amendment
Yes.
to the motion? Okay, very good. Thank you for that, Commissioner Janoff. And so we will go ahead and with our roll call vote, and I will start with Commissioner Chavana.
Yes.
Commissioner Janoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And I will ask staff if there are appeal rights based on the action of this commission.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available online and at Town Hall. There is a fee for filing the appeal. An appeal must be filed by 4 p.m. 10 days after this decision.
Very good. Thank you for that. And so we will move on to the rest of our agenda. There is nothing under other business. So the next thing will be the report from the Director of Community Development.
Thank you, Chair. Only a couple items. One, want to let folks know that we'll be having a community meeting tomorrow regarding objective standards at 4 p.m. Via Zoom. So if you know folks that might be interested in that conversation, please get the word out. And then we will be holding a Housing Element Advisory Board meeting next Thursday to discuss site inventory selection for the housing element. So again, encourage folks to get the word out so that we can get as much input as we can on that. And they will ultimately, Housing Element Advisory Board will ultimately be making a recommendation to council, and then they will consider the draft site inventory.
Okay, thank you for that. And so then the next item on their agenda is the subcommittee reports and commission or commission matters. Every member of this commission serves on a committee. The committees that we serve on include the General Plan Committee, which in this year is taking the form of the Housing Element Advisory Board as noted by staff. And then we also serve on the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee, as well as the Historic Preservation Committee. And so I would like to find out if there are any committee reports since our last meeting, which was a week ago Monday, when we were working on the general plan. Were there any subcommittee reports that Vice Chair Burnett?
Yes, the CDAC met this afternoon concerning a request to amend a plan development for a property known as 300 Mountain Laurel Lane and allow construction of a 6,000 square foot residence where presently 3,000 is allowed as the max. And the owner's representative supplied information to the committee, and the committee made recommendations and provided comments that hopefully will be helpful to the applicant in the future.
Okay, very good. And then also the, as not mentioned by staff, the Housing Element Advisory Board did meet on Cinco de Mayo, and we had a second meeting to discuss the site inventory, and where the direction of this meeting went was to finish talking about there are 10 districts in which potential new housing can be built, and staff had created a list of potential sites. And what the Housing Element Advisory Board has been doing is to look at each district and the recommended sites from staff and determining if there's any sites that needed to be deleted or sites that needed to be added, or if there are particular sites that were included in the inventory so far should be emphasized as something that is really worthwhile. So we did complete that review last Thursday. And so the next step, as staff mentioned, there will be a meeting on the 19th in which we will be looking at more details regarding those sites towards the eye of recommending a list of potential sites that would go to town council that would satisfy the regional housing needs allocation plus the required buffer. So so next week's meeting will be probably a board longer and more discussion because we'll be making that recommendation to town council hopefully in that meeting. So that's the report from the HEB, and I don't think that Historic Preservation met since our last meeting. So then I wanted to thank all the commissioners for their work and an additional congratulations and thank you for all the hard work that went into the general plan recommendation that we made last Monday, which will hopefully be going to town council in the near future. And with that in mind, I will say this Commissioner Clark.
Sorry, I have a commission matter, if that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Going along the lines of what you, Chair Hansen and Director Paulson said, I want to really encourage my fellow commissioners to use the Balancing Act tool. It's, I think, really important, especially for us as planning commissioners, to have an understanding of what community members are seeing when they're thinking about sites, and then also to provide our own input. And so if you all could all do it, and then also I think we should all try to encourage community members to do it because it's been hard to get engagement on that. I would love to see that happen.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Clark. And I would echo that we should all participate in this process of using the Balancing Act tool. I mean, it does take some time to go into the tool and go through the sites, and you have to end up adding it up to the regional housing needs allocation number. But it's a really important exercise, and we really do want to encourage ourselves to be part of this process, as well as other members of the community because it's really essential to hear as many people's views on where are the best places to put this housing, since it is a big number. So I thank you for that, bringing that up, Commissioner Clark. And are there any other commission matters? So I don't miss anybody. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so then I will say this meeting is adjourned, and we will see you, I assume, in 2 weeks. Thank you. Good night.